We are live. This is Literary Roadhouse. One short story, once a week. I'm Anais.
I'm Andy.
And I'm No Animal Crossing here, Gerald.
Yeah, Gerald hates Animal Crossing because we record this on Sunday, so Andy and I talk turnips. You know, that's just how it is.
Right. You gotta do it.
Yeah, and either people get that reference or they don't, and that's all the explaining I'm going to do. Because we have a short story to discuss.
Hey, tell us about a short story, Anais.
Yeah, I will.
Wow.
Yeah, it's called Disaster Stamps in Pluto or on Pluto. Now I'm forgetting.
Pluto.
Of Pluto. Disaster Stamps of Pluto by Louise Erdrich. And it was good. I liked it. Anyway, so what happens in the story is there's these two older women.
It was good. No,
yes.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. I had a good time. I was mildly disappointed it wasn't the planet Pluto, but the story recovered quickly.
Wait, can we just take a moment and talk about that?
Yeah.
Yes.
You announced it, and I was very excited for like some sort of slightly sci-fi, just some stupid town named Pluto. And where?
Yeah.
Like Nebraska? Does it even matter?
North Dakota.
Yeah.
North Dakota.
But I will say this, the first paragraph, if you come into it expecting it to be on the planet Pluto, the first paragraph is consistent.
Oh, yeah. Oh, great job. And then just crushed all my dreams.
That's exactly how I felt. I'm like, oh, I'm like actually picturing like the soil is like a dull grayish blue because that's what I'm picturing in Pluto. I'm picturing like a frontier town. You know, there's like a piteous accident on a farm with a boy. I'm like, oh, that Pluto planet farming, you know. Yeah.
Karina was just walking over my shoulder while I was reading it. And it was just like, oh, that's a good sentence for the first sentence. Right? Great sentence.
Great sentence. Especially for a sci-fi where you're settling a distant planet in our solar system. Like that was fantastic. And then that's not what it was.
No.
Is Pluto one of those planets that's like minus 3,000 degrees Kelvin or something? Or is it more habitable than that? I guess
it's absolutely not habitable.
Right, it's
but
a stupid ice rock. Yeah.
Okay, it's an ice rock. Okay. So, yeah. But then you never know. Sorry,
Annie. I was going to say in a sci-fi, anything is possible.
Indeed.
Yeah. But that's not what this was.
Anything's possible.
Also, Pluto's not a planet anymore, right? Or did they?
No, I think it's back in. It's back like a planetoid. There's a whole.
There's a new word for it. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Dwarf planet. Something's a dwarf planet. I don't know.
Discuss that on Slack.
Wow. Okay, we can, but our listeners are here for astronomical debate. All right.
I actually spat water out over my laptop there.
All right.
Okay, still works though. That's good.
So Pluto, North Dakota, is a dying town. Settled, it looks like the early either 1900s or late 1800s. And then I started Googling these sort of small railroad towns that were made around that era. And it's like, there's a bunch of them and they all have like 100 people in them nowadays. I mean, with a few exceptions. This town, Pluto, there's these two women, the protagonist and her friend, Neve or Nev? How are you guys saying it in your head?
Nev, like Nev Campbell.
Oh, true. Is it another E
Neve.
or without another E? Nev.
Neve.
You were saying Neve? I don't know. We'll go with Nev.
Nev Campbell spelled the same.
Okay.
Is it?
Googled it.
But is that person American?
Good job.
Yes.
Well, there you go. Move on.
So they're octogenarians, and they are pretty much central to two longstanding sort of myths, or not myths, but like stories that happened in the town from the 20s. So one was did the murder happen in the 20s? I think it did in 24, right? The protagonist's family was all murdered in their home. One sole survivor, the baby, who is now this protagonist, an octogenarian who was raised by her aunt and grew up to be a doctor. And Nev, her uncle, was the banker who stole everyone's money and then was running off to Brazil when his brother, who is Nev's father, stopped him, convinced him to come back shortly after he committed suicide, and Nev's father took over the bank. So the stories were always understood to be that in Nev's story, the suicide was over a broken heart of a woman, And on the murdered family side, it was a boy who was in love with the protagonist's older sister who killed the family. And then we find out through the course of the story, neither one of those are quite accurate. And both of them have this sort of late life need to set the record straight and before something, right? That part, I guess, is a little bit open for discussion. So any big things that I'm missing from my summary?
I don't think so. Weren't a lot of other towns given planet names as well at the same time? Did I read that, or did I imagine it?
Yeah, no, that's true. They just got onto a naming convention once they ran out of.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Townville and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Zeus, Neptune, Apollo, and Athena. Yeah.
But there isn't that naming pattern in actual North Dakota. I did a quick search and I couldn't find any of those. So I think the idea of the naming convention is real, that holds, but the specific one with the Roman gods was made up for the story. But the overall idea, because like some of the towns were like named after the owners of the railroad companies who like settled these towns. So like the general history is correct. Yeah, the thrust of it. Okay. So, Gerald, what did you think of the story?
I really enjoyed it. The one thing was that when it became clear that the narrator was female, I was a bit surprised because I had them, and I don't know why I would have, but I had them as a male, and maybe I'm just a typical bloke and assume that every important character is male in stories, but I don't know. It's very strange. So it surprised me a little bit when it became obvious that she was female. But I really enjoyed it. It was fascinating. Really a great story and quite subtly delivered as well.
Andy?
Yeah, I liked. I know in your summary you kind of just presented it informationally, but right, we find out first that the narrator had abandoned her medical practice as like a throwaway line a million years before, and then much later in the story it's like, oh yeah, and then that baby grew up to be a doctor. I was like, wait a minute, and then like even later we're like, and that was me. Right, yeah. So it's just right, it wasn't like a deep mystery of the cosmos or anything, but it was a fun little out of order information hook, right? To keep you on your toesies.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Where it wasn't like a big info dump in the beginning. Everything was sort of almost removed in the way that they were revealed until she herself started in her own mind in the telling of the story, wrapping her own story up in the myth of the murder, right? Because it seemed like for the way the story was told in the beginning was, there was this murder of a whole family. So it's like happening to someone else. And it's not until she's like, yeah, what happened to that baby? What weird thing happened later in her life that when she came to grips with that is when she's like, yeah, that was me.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So actually let me pull up my questions because I don't even remember them. So one of the things that's interesting is they're kind of like the whole society, like the Pluto Historical Society. The protagonist is the president, and she's described as sort of being thrust into it, like volunteered for it by other people. And it sounds like, for the most part, Nev is the only other member, right? Like a historical society of two.
Yeah. There's like 20 people in the town, so.
Right. So it's a little interesting that in both cases, when they're revisiting the family stories, it's presented as this insistence, a knock that the story must get out. I don't know if you guys made anything of that. Like, why is this insistence happening now?
I think because Nev is likely to go and move to be close to her grandchildren. So there's a sort of time limit, and you get the feeling that the discussion has to happen before she leaves town and goes to move elsewhere, wherever that is.
Fargo.
Yeah.
Fargo. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. It's the end, right? It's the end of the town, but it's also almost the end of these two women.
Mm.
Right? There's not going to be another time to do this.
Right. There's this sort of existential pressure on both the women and the town, because it ends with this whole story was like a submission in a newsletter that for a historical society that is now defunct. They are now declaring this the end. The story of Pluto is over. It is going to like live in a cabinet somewhere at the University of North Dakota. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And like their stories were the same way, right? They were a story about the town, and they were a story about these two women personally as well, right? They were very personal family stories, and they were also major events in the town's history.
Mm-hmm. And it's also interesting how each of them knows a piece of the story that creates a more truthful account of what actually happened, but we still don't actually know what the full version is, right? Like Murdo Harp would have had a different version of this. I'm sure the protagonist's aunt would have had a different version of this. But we're left to trust, their versions of it. And that's ultimately what the record's going to be forever, right? Their versions are the ones that are going to be in the history books for Pluto, for the 10 people who study the history of North Dakota small towns, right?
Well, because they're the two that made it to the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So both stories kind of had a twist. Should we just dig into what those actual stories were? Like, why is it called Disaster Stamps of Pluto? Where do the stamps come in? Are there stamps? Let's just get into the nitty gritty of the plot. So what's Nev's family's story? I don't know who wants to take it.
Yeah, I think it all centers around stamp collecting and her what relationship? What relationship
Her uncle.
to Nev? Sorry,
her uncle.
Yeah, so I thought it was her uncle. Yeah, is a stamp collector, but then he goes a little bit off beam and then starts collecting more sort of unusual stamps and then particularly stamps and letters that were relevant to particular natural disasters.
The dark side of stamp collecting.
Yeah. And I thought it was really good, and then he got a little bit deeper where it looked like he was actually just going to start trying to forge them and trying to create money that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he tried to forge a Titanic letter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what's funny? All the stamps that she mentioned is like the Holy Grail, the misprint, this and that. I Googled them. They all exist and are totally real.
Really?
Yeah, that was fun.
Wow.
I'm like, oh no, the Swedish one that was orange instead of blue-green. That is a real thing. The British magenta one, big deal.
No, it's
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Which was fun. Like, yeah, like also it's kind of funny because it's like, did the author already have a pre-existing interest in stamps and this just kind of came from like something she already knew, or did she like have this weird stamps idea, or like she saw it maybe like at like a garage sale one day and then just dug in way too deep, found herself with this trivia and was like, I gotta do something with this, right? Like I think that's not important to the story of the plot, the story of literary analysis, but it's just like the amount of detail in these stamps. Where did this come from?
Yeah. But it wasn't. At no time did you feel, because it was the detail of the stamps was actually wound into the narrative as it was being told. Mm-hmm. So you never found out. Oh, the authors. You never got suspected that the authors found out something about stamps, and here it comes. This big old info dump. It was really nicely done, really well worked into it, I thought. Right.
This wasn't like reading Moby Dick and like we get it. You know all about whales.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then, so the twist is that her uncle, the more specific thing is that her uncle was a big stamp collector. He had a stamp collection that could have been worth more than what he had stolen from the bank, could have been worth as much as the bank itself. And that he had taken all of that money because he wanted to buy a super rare stamp from the Vesuvius eruption. Because yes, there were stamps back then. And there's some woman, a rubber baron's wife, who has it in Brazil because she's a Pompeii collector. Okay, so it's all coming together in this crazy way. That's like, it's just entertaining, So that's what he wanted to do before the brother talked him off this ledge. And that the real reason he committed suicide was not because he was heartbroken over some passionate love affair, but because the woman wrote to him to say that her 3-year-old son had accidentally ruined the Pompeii letter and the rare stamp. That's what he couldn't handle anymore. And the way that he committed suicide was by like a 2-foot deep puddle, the river in low, like when it was like low. Well, there's no tides, but when the river was low, right?
Low ebb.
Yeah. So, wow, what a story.
Yeah.
Over stamps.
Right. I also like that, like, he specifically didn't kill himself, even because he got caught stealing the money from the bank.
No.
Right? Like, that was not his concern.
No.
The stamp was lost.
The stamp was lost. And then when she discovers that some of them were forged and she's angry at him for it, then she's like, well, maybe like that's part of the charm of this story, right? This like crazy stamp collector who has a legitimate stamp collection, but then like forged some of these. And the ultimate disaster is like the disaster of his life over stamps, right? Like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The whole collection is a disaster now in a way. Yeah. That story was wild. I liked it. Like over something so mundane. So then what's the protagonist's story end, if you want to tackle that one? What's the twist? How does that story evolve from the murder of her family when she was a baby?
Well, like part one of the twist, right, was like just finding out that she was the baby.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because like she tells the story first. So like the whole family got murdered except for a little baby that was found some days later, severely dehydrated. The paramour of the older daughter of the family ran away as soon as he heard. So everyone in town assumed he was the killer. The baby was then raised by his mother, his aunt,
Her aunt.
his parent. No, the killer's aunt.
The killer's aunt. Yes, you're
the
right.
suspected killer's aunt.
The
suspected killer's parents left. The aunt stayed in town,
right.
and the aunt raised the surviving baby.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So then the baby grew up, went to medical school, did a practice, came back to be a small town doctor. And then they always suspected that someone was sending money, presumably the killer, and it certainly wasn't the young man everyone thought it was, since he had, I think, swanned off to Canada. I don't know. He ran away.
Well, I think he ran away.
He went to the military.
Yeah, so first they thought he ran away to Canada. Then they thought he couldn't have run away to Canada because he was leaving us all of this money. But then he allegedly died in the war. So who's leaving all this money now? Yeah. Because remember, she says that she, for a couple of reasons, doesn't think that that boy should have been vilified by the town the way he did. One, well, you get to that part, the love note, but yeah.
Right. So then they found the love note that showed he was not a scorned lover. He was in a relationship with this girl. There was very little reason. Mm-hmm. Right, like that narrative doesn't hold up. And then there's I don't remember the identity of the crazy old man.
Wald Warren.
Yeah.
Like that. Mm-hmm.
But like what was he? He was like just like a farmhand.
A farmhand,
yeah.
Farmhand.
So then this random farmhand got sick because he was a coot and didn't want anyone to treat his wound, and it was getting gangrenous. And so the doctor helped him. He freaked out a ton when the doctor came in, then eventually came to peace with her, looked forward to seeing her. And then when he died, his lawyer came and left the doctor a whole ton of money, folded up in the same way that the person who left money all her life folded the money. Mm-hmm. Huh. So if the person who left the money was the killer, then this guy was that person.
Right. And also she had sort of suspected, even before she got the money after his death, that he had some, the way he treated her was suspicious.
Right. His reactions were all wrong and out of sync. Right.
So it's just, I thought it was just cool. Just this way in which there's like a review of these two women's, these octogenarians' lives late in life. There's the story they want to get down on paper before they resign themselves to just sort of like their very, very twilight years, like, what's the most extreme version of Twilight, right? Because it isn't even like a post-retirement thing. Like at this point, it's like Nev just wants to go join her family because she thinks, she's got a few years left. And the protagonist is going to keep doing her daily walk around the perimeter of the town until she can't anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Like they just resign themselves to the end. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lovely line, isn't there, where she says, "I shall at least keep walking the perimeter of Pluto until my footsteps wear my orbit into the Earth." And I think that sort of, there are quite a few places during the story that that sort of parallel to the planet just sort of dropped in. I think that was really nice.
And there's a way in which the end, there was one question I had throughout reading the story the first time over and over, which is this story, it's hauntingly beautiful, but why is it being told as a memory? You could make some of these points about storytelling, truth, the way that I think there's some like smaller themes there, sort of like community stories, oral stories, the way they're passed on, they get morphed. There might be a few people who know the full truth. All of that can be established by following the protagonist through her life and key points, right? You could have done the scenes with the patient who's has an infected leg, in real time, so to say, like in the present, not constantly as a memory. And it's not until the very end where the whole thing is closed as a final entry into Pluto's historical newsletter that it's really clear why doing this as a memory, a look back, was really smart. Because for a while, there was a part of me that was like, but why do it this way? You could have made a lot of the same points, doing this linearly without that memory. But I think establishing how Pluto is dying and the fact that they're just preserving this for, honestly, a very small audience to ever ingest is tragic and hauntingly beautiful.
And also by doing it this way is us as the reader discover things later on and make the connections later on, which is quite nice. And I missed the fact that it didn't even occur to me because of the date. I think the murder was in 1924 or something, and it seems so contemporary. So I thought, well, who is this tiny baby that was saved? It can't be the narrator. But the story is set in 1997 or something. So it's 2004.
2004, so she's 80 exactly.
80, yeah. So that was so it was. I sort of got that little disconnect, and then when I finally realized that she was that baby, when she got that box with the money in, I just think, oh yes, of course. Everything fell into place, which was enjoyable, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the review was very good, as Andy was also saying. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think we've explored what I wanted to explore. I only had one more comment, which was, even though I was mistaken in thinking this was a story about the planet Pluto, or the dwarf planet Pluto, I thought when they were describing it, it was a frontier settlement town. That's why it was, abandoned and stuff like that, or, like a sort of failed settlement, but sort of like the beginning of something. But it was actually the end of something. And it's kind of funny how like the beginning and the end look so similar, right? Like,
oh, yes.
Yeah. But that's mostly because I came in here expecting a story about the settlement of a distant planet. So like, that's not, I don't know how intentional this is. Yeah. Yeah.
And we still want to read that story, don't we?
Well, right.
Yeah, I like the story, though.
It's Chekhov's Pluto, right? You introduce a Pluto in the first act, you better have a planet in the third act.
Right.
Chekhov's Pluto.
Yeah.
Very good.
Also, just a little bit about the author. So she's from, I'm probably going to say it wrong. I actually want to look up how to pronounce it. I probably should have before that. It's the 5th largest Native American people, 2nd largest in Canada. Ojibwe. Yeah, I think it's pronounced like that. People who are mostly from like northern Midwest, like the Dakotas, Minnesota. She's from Minnesota and Canada. And the author, Louise Erdrich, she's from the second wave of the Native American literary renaissance that happened. So it was in the late 60s, 70s, and in the 80s. There was a couple waves of Native American literature, sort of like reclaiming Western stories and stories to take out in that setting, which is interesting. And she has, I put my notes in another room before I started recording. That's like the worst thing ever. I was like, I knew I was forgetting something. But so she has a trilogy, a loosely affiliated trilogy that is set in Pluto as well. Let me find the name of it. It's like the Plague Doves, the The Plague of Doves. The Plague of Doves, which was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize for fiction that I want to read now.
Wow.
Yeah. 2009 novel. And it's
not the Nobel Prize.
No, not the Nobel Prize. No. Easy though. Anyway.
Nice one.
Okay. Anything else we want to add?
I don't think so. Go on, Andy.
Yeah, no, just we talked a lot about the story, but like, how did it make you feel?
That's such a good question. Like I said, hauntingly beautiful. Like I don't know. It's meaty, good. Just when you're in an author who knows what they're doing and they just know how to craft a story and just really take you into a different world. It's not a world that I think about often. It's not issues that I have to think about often, but they take me there. They make it extremely sympathetic. I feel like I learned something. I cared about it. I was entertained where I needed to be entertained. Like, it's really nice to just be in the hands of an author that knows what they're doing,
Yeah, I think so. I think it's. I mean, it may feel a little bit sad because it's always sad to see something coming to an end that has merit, and even the sort of historical society itself. It had merit, and now that's coming to an end because Neve is going to be moving away. But I think it was really well done because it didn't get too what's the word? We'd say soppy.
It wasn't maudlin.
It wasn't maudlin. No, it wasn't maudlin. It wasn't. Here's the death of a small town, and here's the death of the approaching death of two old women. They got out and walked every day. They've got interests. They quite sort of minor interests, and they've got history and so I sort of enjoyed that. I enjoyed that the characters for being what they are and not pretending to be something else, or not sort of reflecting back and wishing they'd done more with their life, or there were no regrets. It's just, this is how it is and this is what we do. And I think even when at the end, when she was talking about Neve moving away, that it was still, there was still no sort of no attempt to make you sympathize with the narrator. It's just, this is what happens, and this is, all who celebrate it will be ghosts, and that's so it's sort of perfectly natural, and the narrator seemed at ease with it.
See, I kind of struggle with deciding if I liked it or not. It was very skillfully done, right? And I kind of felt like the author was leading me down this path, right? Like, oh, here's these things, follow me around, have these emotions, take a look at this one. Here's an emotion, try that one out. I don't know. I think I kind of felt dumped at the end, and they're like, okay, now you're on your own. I was like, no, I trusted you to reveal something to me, and you're kind of like, yeah, sometimes things end. I'm out.
But I think the revelations were there. This is just, and we've talked about this before, like things that have, you do a little bit of digging to get something out of it, or the revelations aren't, there's no call to action in, you know what I'm saying? Like, how some things, like, they leave you with a moral or a lesson that you're supposed to carry with you. There's nothing here for you to carry with you. It's just like, please recognize this fact of humanity and life. Okay. I will. Yeah. Thank you. I will bear witness to this. You are right, and this feels true. But it's still, I guess, kind of what you're saying. It feels really skillful. I guess what I would say I liked it as somebody who likes to read literature, because it felt like a good, like, it didn't feel like I was wasting time or anything. It felt like a good way to spend my time. It felt like a story worth the time that I gave to it, if that makes sense. It felt worthy of the attention, and like it was doing something just, yeah, the way that fiction just makes you think about other people that you normally don't. It was making me do that, and I like that.
Yeah.
And it's quite funny that both of us was sort of trying to explain why we felt the way we did about it, and it's sort of it's quite difficult to explain, because on the surface it's just a story of a couple of historic elements within a town and two old people, but actually there's much more to it than that, and it's quite difficult to convey how it made me feel about it, because it was I know Andy didn't sort of felt that he was being led around, but I'm quite happy to be led around by a story. I don't like being challenged. I like being told a story and then finding out or discovering for myself the depths of the story and the meanings of it and all this sort of stuff, and then later on discovering parts of the story that I wasn't aware of. So I thought that I like that, but it's still kind of hard to explain.
Right. Well, so I was hoping that listening to you guys talk that I'd be able to say either I did enjoy this, or I disagree with everything you said, and it's like, aha, I didn't enjoy it. But I think I enjoyed the reading of it, and also but it just left me unsettled, right? It left me off kilter. I was like, all right.
That's good. That's effective writing, right?
Yeah, but I didn't want to be off kilter.
Well,
and I don't think it's going to be one of those stories that I'm going to think about in a week's time or 2 weeks' time and think, yeah, that story. It's good in the moment, and it's good in the reading, and it's interesting to talk about it. But other than that, there's not much more. It's really good, but it's not.
As we go to the ratings, it's like, for me, it's a solid 5, where it's really skillful, very good. Didn't make me shout from the rooftops. I'm not sending this link to every single person I know, you must read this right now, right? So sometimes I feel like these episodes might kind of sometimes be our more mellow episodes. We don't disagree. It's really skillful. Hard to argue with that. For our listeners who are writers, it's interesting to see the parts that worked, why we thought it was skillful, right? But we're not sitting here either angry at some crap, right, which has happened, or screaming about how awesome something is, or the most compelling episodes when we completely disagree, right? When one of us is like, this is a 6, and someone else is like, this is a 2, right? But we get these sometimes where it's that was just really good. And okay, thanks. That was a good way to spend, a half hour of my time.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so I'm giving it a 5. What are you guys giving it? Also a 5? And
Gerald, some people listen to this on audio.
Oh yeah, Gerald.
Love to hear your voice.
Yeah, okay. Well, I was holding up a hand with 4 fingers and a thumb, so that's a 5 from me.
5 in total. 4 and a thumb. 4 and a thumb from Gerald. I think I'm gonna give it 4. I'm gonna save my thumb.
Okay, save your thumb.
Yeah, but a good 4, a nice 4.
Also, 4.5.
Yeah.
But you don't do half points.
I don't do halves.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Game time. Where are you guys submitting?
Well, I didn't think I would, but I'm going to try and submit once again 2 Little Soldiers by Guy de Maupassant.
You like those soldiers, Gerald?
I do like those soldiers. That's an accusation. We'll give it a go.
I will submit The Wish for a Good Young Country Doctor by Alan Gurganus.
Okay.
Wow.
So this story had me looking up things about North Dakota, and I found 50 interesting facts about North Dakota. I pulled out.
We're going to do all 50?
All 50. I pulled out 6 of them that are centered around numbers. So I'm going to start giving you a fact, and then you need to tell me. You guys are each going to guess on each one, see who gets closer number-wise. Okay? Watch. Very simple. So, the world's largest hamburger was eaten in Rutland, North Dakota. It weighed 3,591 pounds. Multiple people were invited to the meal. How many people did it take to eat the 3,591-pound hamburger?
That's got to
Guessing the
be.
thousands of people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's 9,000.
Okay.
9,000. Well, Gerald, you got to remember these are Americans. So I'm going to say
200 then.
4. I'm going to say 7,000.
No! You guys each get a point because it's 8, so you tied.
Oh,
8. Wow.
I'm giving you each a point.
I figured they were good for a half pound each.
Maybe there were some children in there. I don't know.
Well, don't let children in.
That's true.
That's yes,
Okay.
metaphor for life.
Huge herds of bison once roamed the plains of North Dakota. By 1900, fewer than 600 bison were left. Sad times. But President Roosevelt, huge animal lover and hunter, spearheaded efforts to save the bison. Today, about how many bison live in North Dakota?
Andy first this time.
I will say 900.
No,
Okay.
there's more than that.
Right.
1,500.
90,000. So I guess Gerald's closer.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Back. Yeah.
Wow.
We got busy. Bison busy. All right.
I guess, yeah, all these towns are abandoned, so.
I mean,
Where
it's
is
been
North Dakota, by the
been
way?
over 100 years. Up
It's above
on,
South Dakota,
yes, north of South Dakota.
south of Canada.
Oh, is it right up there?
Yes.
On the left?
On the
Not all the way to the left, also known as west.
pretty far to
Partway,
the left.
like in the middle
Oh,
Yeah.
and the north. Yeah.
Middle to the
It's like in the middle of the West.
So it's left of Michigan then.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, quite left of Michigan.
Is it? Okay.
But
Yeah, 'cause
not all
Michigan's,
that's why.
Michigan's Midwest, but it's actually in the east.
Well, like, okay, a lot of places are called the Midwest that are actually in the Great Lakes region.
Mhm.
Right.
Like the lakes are their own little,
They're
yeah,
their
their
own
own
thing.
little bit here.
So it's up and on the left. Thank you very much. Carry on.
Okay. It's one of the square states.
Right.
Really?
Yeah.
Doesn't have any natural borders. It's all sort of drawing a line thing.
yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
So North Dakota holds the Guinness World Record for the most snow angels made simultaneously in one place.
Wow.
How bored are people in North Dakota?
Hey,
Very.
there was some fun facts, but they're just not fun facts. I guess I should say facts that should make North Dakota proud in terms of like its production of like wheat and like apparently all of our pasta comes from there and stuff like that. Like it's important to the American economy, but those are boring facts for a podcast. I'm going with snow angels. All right,
Okay. In one place, you say?
in one place on
In
February
one place.
2007. How many people made snow angels at the Capitol grounds, the state Capitol grounds?
State capital grounds. So that is going to be 1,200.
Okay, Andy.
All right, I think they're more bored than that. You got 8,000 people to come in for a cheeseburger, but that's free
Yeah.
food. So I'm going to say half that, 4,000.
8,962.
Wow.
They got more people for snow angels than for a cheeseburger.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that
What is
makes no
going on
sense,
in North
does it?
Dakota?
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Oh, the snow angels were in winter. They were super bored.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's like quarantine.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you each have 2 points.
Ooh, very exciting.
We're back on burgers because North Dakota has a lot of cattle. Enough
Right.
to make 113 million hamburgers per year. There are more cattle than people in North Dakota. What is the ratio? So what number to one? If one is people, how many cattle to one person?
Go, Andy.
There's not very many people. We know there's 90,000 bison. Those don't count as cattle, but like, man, sure, that's a lot.
There's more cattle than bison
Yeah.
by a lot.
10,000 cattle for every person.
Okay, this is crazy town, Gerald.
That's crazy stuff.
I think there's like 12 people in North Dakota.
No, but there's less than 800,000.
Yeah, I think it's what did Andy say?
10,000 cattle to a person. Andy doesn't understand math, Gerald. You can take this.
Okay. That's like that's going to be 2,000.
No, you're both nuts. What? No, three. Cattle.
3.
You said there was 13 million cows.
No, I said there was 113 million hamburgers, but it's not one cow per hamburger.
Oh, it's not 1 cow per hamburger.
Yeah, not one cow per hamburger, guys.
Well, they're just not making hamburgers right. That's
True. Or
I only eat 400-pound hamburgers.
no, they only eat 3,591-pound hamburgers.
Yikes.
Oh.
Okay, so North Dakota is the 19th largest state. It's not even the largest. There's 18 larger ones in terms of land mass.
Some of them are real big.
Yeah, some are huge, like Alaska. But so Rhode Island is the smallest state. How many Rhode Islands can you fit in a North Dakota?
Oh, Rhode Island's real small, though.
Yeah.
I think you can fit 3 Rhode Islands in Rhode Island. That's just how small it is.
Gerald, to help you out, you can drive across Rhode Island on the interstate in an hour.
Yeah, I can picture Rhode Island. I would say Rhode Island's 600.
Andy?
There's a lot of cows. Cows need space. 90,000 bison. 113 million hamburgers walking around.
We're revealing very quickly that on this literary podcast, we are not good at numbers. Numbers is not our thing. I just said it takes 1 hour to drive across Rhode Island. Do you think it takes? What was your guess?
Well, how many hamburgers?
North Dakota? No.
How many hamburgers per hour? That's the question.
Hamburgers per hour is a good. You know what? You're getting better at math. All
Right.
Gerald, I'm gonna let you guess again because 600 is not. You can't have 600 Rhode Islands in a North Dakota.
Can I not?
No.
You probably have 600 Rhode Islands in Texas.
Okay.
No. Continue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rhode Island's real small.
It's real small, but it isn't like,
I don't. It's got to be something like. Okay. I'm gonna.
possible that when they did math, they included the parts of Rhode Island that are ocean, and Rhode Island's more ocean than land, apparently. It's more boats than people. Anyway, continue.
How many cheeseburgers per boat?
Distraction. Can you make cheeseburgers out of goats? Anyway, I think. What the, I'll stick with. Well, no, because it's obviously wrong, isn't it? 200 then.
Okay, 200 Rhode Islands in a North Dakota. Andy?
Yeah.
6.
You're closer. It's 46. 46 Rhode Islands.
Really?
Yes, in a North Dakota. They might be counting the ocean parts of Rhode Island. I don't know. I didn't call them up.
Right, like I want like square footage, like just ball Rhode Island up into a mass.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's not square footage. You have to look at the shape of it and then physically put those Rhode Islands on.
It's irregularly shaped. You're going to have a lot of empty space.
Yeah. Actually, I'll make it even worse for me, wouldn't it?
No pressure, but you're tied. One of you needs to
melt Rhode Island down.
Yes.
All right.
Weigh them.
That's a good idea.
Okay, guys. This is it for the win. You guys are tied. There is a tiebreaker, but that's not fun. Okay.
Okay.
So one of the quirkiest sports, okay, in quotes, in North Dakota is lawnmower racing. So your conventional consumer lawnmower has a top speed of 5 miles per hour. All right. But that's okay because they customize them. And when they're done customizing these bad boys, what speeds can these lawnmowers reach? What's the top speed?
Andy goes first, I think.
There was an episode of Home Improvement where Tim Allen customized a lawnmower to race Bob Vila. I think Tim Allen's went 200 miles per hour, so I'm going to say 200.
No.
Okay.
70 miles an hour.
Gerald's closer at 60. Gerald's showing his engineering side there. And he is not.
200 miles an hour.
It's a fiction podcast, though, so I think.
True. So we don't need the tiebreaker, but basically, this is relevant to Andy talking about how bored people in North Dakota are. A retired school teacher, Gary Greff, wanted to break up the tedium of the highway in North Dakota. So he made a giant metal sculpture called Geese in Flight. It holds the Guinness World Record for the largest metal sculpture. It was erected in 2001. It's 156 feet long by 100 feet tall, weighs 75 tons. How bored do you have to be driving on a highway every day to be like, I need to break up this tedium?
I got to do something about this.
Giant geese sculpture. Look it up.
Listen to a podcast. Make it.
This was 2001. Podcasts were just getting off the ground. You know?
Oh, okay.
Saved yet. I'm sure there was other things to do in a car in 2001, but he had a better idea.
Who knew?
All right. Okay.
So, Two Little
Gerald
Soldiers. Two Little
And
Soldiers
Longlegs.
by Guy de Maupassant.
Okay. But before you go, gotta scroll down to the outro. But before you go, share your family secrets with us online at our Facebook group, Literary Roadhouse Readers, or Twitter at LiteraryRoadhouse, or our website, you guessed it, LiteraryRoadhouse.com. Do you want to keep Literary Roadhouse alive in the minds of your countrymen? Leave a review on iTunes. It helps others find us. And we're going to start our own rail-adjacent prospector town. Support our settlement and podcast expenses by contributing at patreon.com/literary-roadhouse. Every bit helps. And as always, share this podcast with the old women orbiting your town. Until next time, read a good story.
Yay. Very good.